if you are open to the idea that you don't know everything, just like trust in that process alone, you are still in control of your own destiny and getting better or not. And if you know that, like, well, there, you can keep your ego then, right? But at least know that you could potentially be missing out on something. And if you really want to be the best, don't you want to know what that is? Like, don't you want to know what you're missing out on or how you could get better so that you can actually be the best one?
Kris Wimberly is going to be a mentor on our animation competition. He is co-founder and head of creative Studio Smokescreen, classically trained director and storyboard artist who currently serves as director on Disney branded television's latest Disney Junior animated series, Firebuds. Prior to Firebuds, Kris served as a storyboard artist on Disney's Elena and Avalor. In addition to Disney, Kris has worked at nearly every major studio, including Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, and Universal, among many others. He specializes in comedy and action comedy and has worked on TV productions of all kinds. And then credits, this is awesome. Your credits are close enough. Curious George, which is one of my favorites, Spongebob SquarePants, Teen Titans Go. And you're currently working on a new project in development at Disney about a time traveler treasure hunter, which sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And this part of your bio was, to me, what really just caught my eye, which seems very powerful, that I can't wait to hear a little bit about. But after graduating college, you started as a custodian at Disneyland and then worked your way up the ranks pursuing your passion, which is like, that sounds amazing. So can't wait to hear a little bit about that. But before we get into that, I would like to even go a little bit further back. This is kind of where I like to start, which is, what is it that got you even interested in storytelling in general? Why storytelling? Why animation? Why filmmaking? Like, why this industry? What was it that got you first interested in pursuing this?
Yeah, so I love this question because it makes me think. And when I think back to where it all started, which was, I don't know, it's close to 200 years ago, I feel like I was always very captivated by TV, like most kids. And actually, unfortunately, I grew up with cable TV, like the invention of cable TV. So, you know, there was a lot of like space that they needed to fill on TV, and guess what they filled it with, right? They filled it with a bunch of cartoons and animation, which at the time was recycled cartoons, which, you know, they were cartoons that were originally theatrical released short films before a movie would play. So we're talking about Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes and a lot of the, you know, Droopy Dog and, you know, a lot of those kind of cartoons.
Yep.
And so that's what spoke to me at the time. And there was other shows that were more story based and less like just sight gag after sight gag. But that was really what captivated me, was those jokes, those visual jokes. And so I just consumed it. And that for me was really exciting. And then as cartoons and TV shows became, or animated shows became more sophisticated, I was growing with that, and I could see like, oh, there's more that can be done here. And from a very young age, I'm talking like 4, I remember as early as 4, being so captivated by it that when, you know, adults often ask children, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say, I want to be a cartoonist. And they're like, what does that even mean? You know, because animation wasn't the industry that it is now, right? Like now it's, you know, a rock star job that people, you know, fight tooth and nail to get into. So I feel very blessed that I'm here. But I knew from that early on that I wanted to be in animation and work in TV. And then as time went on and I started to learn what the different jobs were by, you know, watching the extra footage on VHS or DVDs later on, like I'd see, oh, people pitching storyboards on like panels and all this kind of thing. And, you know, everybody's seen those classic photos of like Disney animators, you know, acting things out and kind of being silly. And I'm like, yeah, that's the job I want. And that's how I knew that, oh, okay, so the storyboarding part of the process is really how you formulate the experience for the audience, because character designs are awesome. And for a short time, I thought I was going to be a character designer. And like the writing obviously is kind of the foundation for what, or the roadmap for what we're going to be making. But when it comes to the storyboard, that's where you really figure out like what is going to be on that TV screen or movie screen, and how are we going to take somebody by the hand and walk them through this experience so that they feel it from that driver's seat, from that first person perspective. So we can't leave any stone unturned. We can't leave any gaps in their information or their knowledge. Otherwise, they're going to be lost and confused. They won't understand how these pieces fit together. And ultimately, you fail as a storyteller. And, you know, as I was learning all that, like my passion for that part of it just got deeper and stronger. And that's what I built my career based on, was just being in that part of the story element of animation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that perspective of the storyboard is where everything really starts in animation, and it is how you convey the vision to the people that are going to go on to finish creating the show. Like, I love that so much. So where are you from, by the way? I didn't see in your bio.
Yeah, so I'm actually Southern California, born and bred.
Awesome.
So for me, actually, I spent, I guess, the better percentage of my upbringing in Orange County. So I was Disney adjacent, right? Like Disneyland and all that sort of thing, which ironically, funny enough, it's not anywhere near Burbank. Well, I guess considered to some, it is right next door to Burbank. But as a kid, pre-internet, like I didn't know where the hell Burbank was. It could have been on Mars for all I knew, you know. And so I didn't really have any connections. I didn't have any family ties. My family didn't even really think that I should pursue art as a career, but that's another leg of this conversation, I'm sure. So for me, yeah, like growing up in Orange County and just kind of being like in that Southern California vibe was really beneficial, at least. But
Like kind of having some of the residual stuff of Hollywood, like a little bit in there. That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, I kind of do want to get, like, I like to understand we have a lot of young people in our community that are still in college, some people even in high school and stuff. But what do you think it was that gave you the, like, I don't know if confidence is the best word, because when you're so young, you're just kind of going by passion, but what gave you the indication that you really want to actually commit to pursuing the career? Because there are a lot of young people that love TV and love movies, but nothing ever clicks for them that makes them think like, you know what, I'm actually gonna commit and try to pursue this. What do you think it was with you? And you can get into some of the stuff with your upbringing, like you were saying a second ago. What do you think it was that clicked for you that made you serious about like, I'm gonna actually pursue this and really be serious about this?
Yeah, I guess I would have to thank/blame my father for his stubbornness, because that really is what it is. I mean, we can color it something more cheery, like tenacity. Let's call it tenacity, right? Like,
go wherever you want with it. I want you to be real. You know, I love this stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is stubbornness. I mean, there, you know, at some point when you're growing, well, let me start here with a little bit more like an anecdotal sort of direction. So as I kind of tapped on a second ago, like every time I told people I want to be a cartoonist, people didn't know what that meant. And I didn't even really have the terminology right, because I didn't know the term animator. Like that wasn't in the lexicon at that time at the level that it is now. And so people tried to dissuade me from that, because you know, like most people's perception of art is, you know, starving artist, right? Everybody's heard that term. And your parents, they don't want that for you as, you know, as their child. They want, you know, success and riches and, you know, like comfort, a life of comfort. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. And so I just drew as a hobby, you know, to impress people in school, you know, and stuff like that. But, you know, I didn't get to take any of the extracurricular art activities or art camps or any of the other things that a lot of my friends and peers were allowed to do. So that sort of started to veer my path away from animation. But when I got older, like in high school, you know, everybody preaches like you gotta take your path, your career, your future into your own hands. And, you know, you can listen to advice and listen to other people, but understand that ultimately it's on you, and you know, I don't want to say you only get one shot, because people reinvent themselves all the time, and kudos to those people who have the strength and security to do that. But I wanted to make sure that I at least tried this path, because if I didn't, I knew that I would regret it and be bitter and jaded, and then end up like what you hear all the time: people who hate their jobs, people who complain about going to work, people who, just do what they have to do to support their families or themselves or whatever the case might be. And I just didn't want that for myself. So when I got into high school toward the end, when it was time to apply for colleges and art schools or whatever, I kind of, for lack of a much gentler word, confronted my dad. And I was like, look, I won't know if I don't try. And he's like, well, because he's no longer with us, but he was very like intelligent that way. And he was like, okay, well, you're not 4 anymore. Now you're, 17, 18. If you feel like you want to try that path, go for it, because I understand where you're coming from. And I think maybe he understood, like maybe I kind of struck a nerve with him that way, where he's like, oh yeah, maybe you should give it a go then. And so that's what I did. I went, applied for art school. I got in, and everything was great from there. And it was not a big fancy art school. It wasn't like, some of these really prestigious art schools that are out there. It was just a state school here in California at a branch called Cal State Fullerton, which was highly affordable. And that was great for me, because my family was not able to contribute any money to my college education, like at all. So I had to support myself all the way through school. But I think that's part of the ingredient, right? That's one of the ingredients to my success, is because if I F this up, that is 1,000% on me, right? Like, I made the choice. I'm contributing to it by myself, like monetarily, and investing my time and effort. Like, this is all up to me, and I'm going to get out of it whatever I put into it. And so that was kind of where I found the strength to be like, okay, I just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I got to ask a million questions, because nobody's out here going to do it for me. I have to figure it out and do it myself. So
man, that's amazing. Like that, the courage that it must have took for you to like confront your dad at that moment. Cause think about how different things could have been. Like that's
yeah.
To think about how different, but you had that courage to just say, I'm doing this is what I want to do. And that kind of leads me, I would love to hear about what was your college experience like, because we have a lot of people, we get this question a lot actually, which is film school necessary? Should I take a course? Like, should I go to film school? So I would love to get a little bit about your just kind of experience in college and just your perspective in general on film school. But first and foremost, like that mindset of it's all on you is something that everyone needs to hear, especially younger, right? Like, and that's just so amazing that you had that insight at a young age to really make that commitment. That's so awesome. But in terms of college, like what are your kind of general thoughts on film school? Should people go to film school? Again, it's up to them. Even if you go, it's still like, it's up to you to make something out of it. But what was your experience like in film school? Like, what did you get out of it?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I will preface my answer by saying there is no right answer. And I know that everybody just did a big sigh of frustration, right? Like, come on, what's the answer? There is no perfect answer. But I can say, through my experience and paying very close attention to other people's experience, I've been able to like extrapolate what I think is the way to look at it. There's 2 options, either going to school or not going to school. And if you decide to go to school, what that provides a person is structure. If you are not good, and you have to really think about who you are and come to terms with who you are. If you are not good with structure, organization, self-motivation, all of those things that allow you to, propel yourself forward, school is great, because they will give you all of those things. All you have to do is show up and do the work, right? And bonus points if you go above and beyond that. That was me. I know that if it's left up to me, I will probably not do a whole lot of anything, because like I just need the structure. I need somebody to tell me what to do, and I will execute the hell out of it. Like, that is me. So school worked well for me. if you are able to do those things, like I am in awe of people that I have met and worked with who were like self-starters. They found and piecemealed art classes or workshops or different things. They, watch the YouTube tutorials. They go out and they build their own education and their own sort of way of getting through the material that I know that I couldn't do. And so, yeah, save all that money, save all that time, and just, nail it much more directly that way. And great, that'll work for you. But I think that's where it starts from, is understanding what you need to succeed. And if you know that you need that guidance and that structure, probably school is a better way to go. And also, let's not forget a network, which is more easily findable now because of the internet, right? Yeah. Twitter, Discord, all these things. So that's not really beneficial one way or the other, because you can find them in both ways. But there is a whole other network of like being able to get internships, which you wouldn't be able to do if you're not a student, in many cases, not in all, but in many cases. So there is those benefits as well. So you just have to decide what you need, what a person has to decide what they need to get them forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's such a good, just a good insight. And I'm gonna, if don't mind me, I'm taking notes like here and there, just so I don't forget certain things. But a couple of things that I wrote down is you seem like a very self-aware guy, which is such a good quality, right? Like it's such an important quality, and this can go in any direction. But I'm curious, like, how do you think, or what are your thoughts on like people needing to work on their self-awareness? Because like you just said, the most important thing when you're ready to make that decision for college, but for anything, is like, well, you need to know yourself. And I feel like, and I'm not trying to judge or assume, but in Hollywood, I have a lot of friends and people, I feel like they don't prioritize self-awareness and kind of understanding themselves. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you seem very self-aware, like you really have that insight,
Well, thanks for saying that. That is a very, very high compliment, I think. And I mean, there's a theme here that you've already caught on to it, because the other part of my school experience, which led to my eventual success, I guess, in the career, in the actual industry, is that self-awareness. That is maybe the key most important element, because in school, I knew that, if you remember, I said, like, I wasn't doing all of the extracurricular and camps and all that stuff that other people were doing. So when I got to college, that first class was my first day of art training, like, ever, right? Whereas there have been people who've been doing it for like, 10, 12, 14 years throughout their childhood, now prepared for school and to do that. So I knew I had to work very hard to catch up. And this is where that self-awareness comes in, because I had, I guess, a motto. I had a motto or a philosophy at the time that good isn't good enough, because people would always tell me, oh, your stuff is good. And I'm like, well, I got to keep working then, because I know that I have to get as good as the rest of these people, and then better if I want to be competitive out there in the industry.
Yeah.
Because just because I can draw circles around this person in this classroom, there's somebody in that classroom who can draw circles around me. And then outside of this classroom, there are people who can draw circles around them. And by the way, let's not forget that when we apply for real jobs, there are people we're competing against who've been doing this for 30 years professionally. So how are you going to tell me that good is good enough? It's not, right? So that was part of my self-awareness, which leads to the next thing. And that is getting into the industry, trying to get into the industry, that transition. I knew that my work needed to be at a place where it just was not yet. And far too often I review portfolios, and I'm constantly on these like education circuits and whatever, meeting up and coming talent. And to your point, that level of self-awareness is not there. And I can show it to people very simply by saying, okay, here's your work and here's this person's work. Do you think this person's work is good or stellar? And they would say yes. And now look at your work. Do you feel like these are the same? And then they go, oh, wait a minute, actually it's not. Well, if you would have noticed that earlier, now you can look at this work with a critical eye, decide what you're not doing that they are doing so that you can apply it to your work, whether it's skill level and technique or emotion driven, whatever it is that you're doing. And this could be anything, right? It could be music composition, it could be voice acting, it could be background painting. It doesn't matter. Art is art, right? So if you can apply those things to your work, now you're going to level up in a way that you didn't realize you needed to do for people out there in the industry to look at your stuff on a competitive level with everybody else. And too many people don't stop a beat to really analyze their work and saying, good isn't good enough. What am I missing here? Right? Like, what am I not doing yet?
Well, I love it. There's just so much good stuff in there. There's so many things I'm like, wait, I want to go this way. I want to go this way. One thing is like you have a competitive spirit that is so necessary, right? But you seem like it's not unhealthy, because you know how it can be with like that.
Yeah.
It gets unhealthy, and some people it gets negative for them. But so what is kind of your relationship with how you put your work up against others, even at this point in your career with the success you have? Like, what advice do you have for people who might lack that competitiveness or that kind of want to compare and do better? Like what any like little tips or advice you have on kind of going in the route of being competitive, but not to where it becomes like toxic, which it can happen very easily. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I'm trying to think of exactly if I can think back. I think what it is, because it's not even about thinking back. Like, I mean, I still have to maintain this type of mentality even now, right? Which is applying that idea of self-awareness. Start at the end. Where is it that you're trying to get to? And how is that, if you trace it back to where you are now, what do you need to do to reach that goal? And when you do that, it makes you so laser focused on just what you need to do and stop worrying about what other people are doing. At least that's how it works for me. And I talk about this a lot with my wife and just other people who are in different industries, and it's the same everywhere. People are people, right? We're all made up the same bag of chemicals, right? So like, if you understand that you are only in control of what you do, not what those people are doing, you only have control of what you do. Okay, well, how many hours did you draw today? That's not up to those people that are surpassing you or that you have surpassed as well, right? It's not always a negative thing, because, by the way, let's be honest, some of what propels me now, even at the level I'm at, wherever you might consider that to be, it's not about me competing with those people up there. There's people behind me. They're coming to take my job, right? So that pushes me forward as well. Like I have to make sure that I'm constantly learning, constantly pushing myself, and constantly elevating my craft, because there are people now who are in school or coming out of school that I believe could draw circles around me or make a better film than I can or whatever. Like that's just the nature of how talent works, right? Yeah. And so, but I do think that, if you start at the end, think about what it is you're trying to achieve, and then figure out how you need to get from where you are to that thing. It takes away a lot of that yuckiness, or like you said, the toxic part about worrying what other people are doing and how that affects what you're doing. Because it really doesn't. Like, the universe just doesn't work that way. Everything is on their own trajectories, and sometimes paths cross, but you're only capable of moving yourself forward and backward. That's it. Right.
I love that. Such a good way to think about it. And then, okay, so I want to make sure we start going back to kind of getting into your stuff. So from college, what was your next step? So after you go to college, you graduate, you really start learning and you start really digging into it. What was your next step after college? Like, was the first job on the Disney, like, was it working at Disneyland, or what stuff came after college that really started to get you that momentum to break into the industry?
Yeah. So once I was in school, and I was there for a total of 6 years, because, again, self-awareness, I knew that I needed to get as good as my peers and then a little bit better if I want to be competitive. So that means that I had a lot of ground to make up. So I did a double major. I did illustration and animation. So they're very different, and there are a lot that kind of overlaps, but there's a lot of skill sets that overlap. But while I was doing that, I started to learn about like internships and all of that stuff that really helps to kind of could help to propel someone's career forward. And that was going to be my next step. Then I said, what's an internship? And somebody said, oh, it's this like a work study program. You work there. And at that time, internships were not paid. It was school credit and stuff. But I'm like, great, I get to get another thing to help me graduate and I get real world experience. That's what I'm going to do. In the meantime, though, before that happened, throughout college, like I said, I had to work because I didn't have scholarships, I didn't have grants, and I didn't have family support to help pay through school. So I was working full time. And what I was doing was I was in sales, a lot of different types of sales, but I was really good at it because, as you can tell, I can be very chatty and have a conversation with anybody. Mm-hmm. And so I did really well with that. There's a point to this. The point is I was doing so well that I noticed I was getting offered all these really great like promotions and, oh, we're going to open a new store over here, go start it and train all these people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, this is great. The problem that I realized, and this goes back to that theme of self-awareness, the problem was that I realized, like I'm getting pigeonholed in that. I'm like making such great money. I was making like a killing because I was so good at sales, but it was not going to propel me toward what I want to do in art. Come to find out later, there's a little bit of sales in trying to build your career, right? Yeah. Which if you're not good at, then you get maybe an agent or a manager. But what I ended up doing was taking a step back from sales by saying, okay, well, I need to get on the track that's going to get me toward where I want to be. How do I do that? So I thought about it for a few days and I realized, I just need to get in anywhere. If I can get in anywhere inside of an art company, I can work my way up because that I know I'm capable of doing. So I said, where is the bottom? I use that very loosely, that term, but where's the bottom of an art company that I could start at? And maybe like, well, who's the biggest one? So I have a lot of room for leverage, a lot of room for growth. And I realized, the biggest art company probably on the planet is Disney, right? And the closest place I have the point of access to is Disneyland, which Cal State Fullerton and Disneyland are basically next door neighbors. Jokingly, we called it Cal State Disney because so many people worked at Disneyland who went to Cal State Fullerton because they're that close to each other, right? So I made up my mind. The next week was spring break, and I knocked on the door, and I'm like, "How do I get a job here?" And they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "It doesn't matter. I'll start out sweeping popcorn, but one day I'll be animating for Disney." And they're like, "Okay, great." And so they put me in custodial services, and that's how I ended up being a custodian at Disneyland. And that started my path because I knew, okay, I'm inside the fortress. All I really have to do is ask questions. That's it. Because the work that's easy, right? You just sweep up popcorn, a kid barfs over there, you clean it up, whatever. But like, I could do that. And the rest is literally just asking questions. Who do I need to talk to about this? How do I get over there for that? Is there some extra program that does this or that for college students? Like just asking without being annoying or without losing focus on the work, because that matters. And that's a reoccurring thing that comes in just a second. But doing that showed the company, he's in the wrong spot. Let's put him over here and utilize him in this other way. So I ended up getting like an art role or an art position inside the parks. Okay, great. Now I'm drawing. I started out sweeping. Now I'm drawing. Like, this is great. And it still wasn't animating for Disney, but at least I'm getting pencil mileage and they see me in a different way now. And that is what led to my internship toward the end of school. Because by that time I was in my fourth or fifth year of college. And so I did my internship in my sixth year because now I'd been doing it for like about a year or so. And that was at Nickelodeon. But they were so fascinated by the story of like, wait a minute. So you decided to like leave all this money behind as a salesperson to go be a custodian to then get up here into Burbank. And so they gave me an internship because they were like, I want to see where this guy goes. Yeah. But going back to the point I put a pin in, I knew that once I'm here, I just have to do the job to show them like, No problem. You need me to do what? I got it. No problem. While I'm here, I'm going to ask a ton of questions, including, will you look at my portfolio? Don't tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, right? Like, again, that self-awareness. And what that led to was them offering me a job full-time as a production assistant. So I'm like, I did it. I'm in. That's how I got into the industry, because I just kept applying those same tactics over and over and over. Sometimes there were missteps. Sometimes, it was a bullseye with the questions or taking initiative and things. But I feel like that is how I bridge that gap from being a student into the industry.
That's such I didn't realize too from reading your bio, like you left behind a good, which is so hard, man. People get
really hard.
Well, it is hard when you're making good money, especially in LA. Like, it's hard out here. Like that's amazing. And you just went and like literally knock on the door. What do I need to do? So that leads me to like, so, and this is kind of, this, I think this could be something broad that people can kind of think about in all areas, but you're talking about asking a lot of questions. Like when you're in these positions, asking questions, what other advice do you have for someone who is at the bottom, like you said, very loosely defined, but someone who is really just starting out, an assistant on a, in a writer's room or even lower, like whatever, what advice do you have that people need? What mindset do you think can really help people to show who they are, to show that they're capable of more without stepping on toes, which is the thing that, I see a lot, like what kind of mindset or what advice do you have for someone with how they should really kind of behave when they're in these positions, but want to really get ahead more?
Yeah. I mean, comes back to that theme, self-awareness. Like, I've had the opportunity to guide and mentor a lot of interns who've gone on to become extremely successful. I'm talking like one person that I became friends with when I was leaving Disneyland, they saw and they were like, how do I do that? And so I laid it out, spelled it out. And this person is now the VP of development at Cartoon Network. Wow. So like the theme is always the same, self-awareness. You have to pull yourself out of yourself and look at yourself and say, what are other people seeing about me? When I was an intern, there were other interns in our cohort that would do the work, but like do it half-heartedly, or like they would walk around with their freaking AirPods in, like listening to music. And, you see like one of the producers, like trying to get their attention to call them to come over. And it's like a chore to get your intern to like be where they need to be or have the level of attention to detail that they need to have. And, people notice what you're doing, even if you think they don't, or even if you think it may not be a big deal. Everybody notices everything and they will hold you responsible, whether to your face or not. And an example of holding you responsible not to your face would be not hiring you, right? After your internship or whatever. And you're going to be like, wow, I thought that went so well. I showed up every day on time. I did everything they asked me to do. Well, yeah, but you weren't really there. You didn't really like show that spark of interest or care or attention to detail. The other thing is, aside from the self-awareness, one thing that I really made sure to do when I was an intern was figure out, okay, there's been a million interns before me and there will be a million interns after me. That's just the way this business goes. So how do I stand out from those people? Well, if I can make sure that within this 3 months that I'm here, which I had stayed for like 5 months, they had to basically drag me out of the building, kicking and screaming. But if I only have 3 months, and this is basically like a 3-month-long job interview, I have to make sure that they feel my absence when I leave. When they go like, holy shit, where did Kris go? Like, we need to get him back here. And that's exactly what happened. But the way I did that was I started finding little like cracks that needed filling, right? For example, this was still like when the industry was turning digital. And so we had, all the like Adobe software and everything like that, but people weren't using it to their fullest potential, the software, because they're so used to still doing things paper and pencil and just very analog. And so I would show like, oh, instead of like creating these sheets every single week that we use to like ship out materials to a partner studio, you could build a template with all these different layers and just click them on and off and change the ones you need when you need it. And they were like, holy shit, like that. Yeah, like how come nobody spoke up and did this before? And so it's little things like that. And I always ask for permission. I didn't just do it and be like, hey guys, look what I did. Like I would say, hey, I noticed there's this way that we could probably make this more efficient. Can I show you? And do it like that. And they're just like, we need to pay this guy to be doing this stuff. And that's how I made sure to do all those things I was saying, be self-aware of what I'm doing. And, have, even when I was making photocopies, every time I was done making, and this is not really a big thing much anymore because the way that digital stuff is, but when I would have to make photocopies of storyboards, these things are like 200, 225 pages thick, but I would always make sure they were clean, stacked nicely, bull clipped in order. I would like rotate them so they stacked nicely. And I would get them over to the meetings and people were like, whoa, like it looked like a cake. It was so clean and sharp. And when I handed them out, they were still warm because I didn't waste time getting them from the copy machine to the meeting. I got it there when it needed to be. And people would always be like, oh, these are so warm, things like that. But those are the levels of detail and care that show people like, you need me to do something, I'm on it, and I'm going to care about what I'm doing. I'm not just going through the motions, right?
So there's a bunch of stuff that I wrote down here. One thing is attention to detail, which obviously you seem to be very attentive and care about the small things. I would just love to hear like your thoughts or advice that you have to someone that might struggle a little bit with like focus, attention to detail. And what do you think is the value of going above and beyond with those little things? I mean, obviously with your internship, like that is what made people remember you when you were gone, which is such a good way to think about it. It's such good advice. Like make people remember you when you're gone. Like just think of it that way. But what are your thoughts on, or how can people be more attentive? Like what is it that it kind of drives you to want to pay such attention to the little details and everything?
Yeah, I mean, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Like, let's just be honest about that. But again, self-awareness. You need to, like, if you don't have sharp attention to detail, and by the way, if you're not sure, the answer is you don't, probably. Like, if you're not sure if you have a good attention to detail, probably you don't. Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine. How do you remedy? Go ask. What can I be doing to do better? Like, where do you think I could come up a notch or two, doing this or that task or whatever? And people will be so impressed that you even asked that already is worth like 3 brownie points, right? Like people are so impressed that you even ask because most people won't. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. It's admitting that you're not strong at something, but that's not a weakness. That's actually a strength. The fact that you know that you could be better at something and that you just ask. And when I used to hire interns, or actually, you know what, even now, hiring anybody, I have conversations with my line producers now at Studio Smokescreen where I'm like, I would rather you ask me 10 times so that I can just tell you than you think you kind of know and do it wrong. And then it's like, why didn't you just ask? And we'll just walk through it because it's not a problem. I just need to know what you aren't clear on, because that could be something on my fault for not explaining it well. Like there's so many ingredients there that could make it go right or wrong, but you just ask, like, what can I be doing better? And people love that. People automatically put you in a different category when you have that awareness and when you have the courage to ask for guidance. So, I mean, obviously self-awareness, this is such a strong theme. It's coming up in everything. And also, I think this kind of, can take us in any direction again, but you seem like you're very self-aware, obviously, but also humble. Like you have a real confidence, but it's balanced with humility, which is such a rare thing in my experience. And like a lot of the stuff that you're just saying about not wanting to ask, you're kind of embarrassed about this. What advice or what is your philosophy or your mindset on how can young artists with big egos work on
being more humble, work on not caring about other people's opinions to the point where it's like, making you stagnant. Like, what advice do you have on humility and just kind of ego, putting that ego to the side? Like, what's your philosophy of ego, I guess is a good way to put it.
That is a really good question. I don't know that I've ever thought about this from that direction, from that angle, because I'm so busy trying to make sure that I don't miss something. I mean, maybe that's the answer, right? Like, if you understand that the moment you think you have it all figured out or that you don't need help, you are going to miss something, and you're just not going to grow. And I remember seeing that in every level of my journey. Like in art school, like you said, like some people have great talent, great skill, but if you just show up to class so that you can pass it, like you're not really going to get anywhere. And I saw that happen a lot of times. People just waste amazing talent, and now they never even made it into the industry because they thought they had it all figured out because they were the best character designer in that class of 26 people or whatever. And so I feel like, if you are open to the idea that you don't know everything, just like trust in that process alone, you are still in control of your own destiny and getting better or not. And if you know that, like, well, there, you can keep your ego then, right? But at least know that you could potentially be missing out on something. And if you really want to be the best, don't you want to know what that is? Like, don't you want to know what you're missing out on or how you could get better so that you can actually be the best one? Like, take a chapter out of the great book of anime, I guess, right? Like, if you really want to succeed, you want to like go out there and beat everybody who's better than you. And the way to do that is to have an open mind to the fact that you probably and actually don't know everything and could stand to get better,
Always be learning, right? That's something that
always be learning. Yes.
On like throughout this whole interview so far is striving to always learn. And that's such a good quality, which I think for young people, especially, like we need to hear that, we don't know everything, and we should always be looking for the gaps to fill. Sorry. Another little note. We only have like 15 more minutes. This flew by for me. Like, I feel like we've only been talking for like 30 seconds, but one quick note. And then I would love to hear more about Studio Smokescreen and all the things you're working on, but passion. This is something I always try to just dig into a little bit when I interview people. You seem like a very passionate person. And that to me, it's such an attractive quality because as weird as it is, living in LA, like most people aren't passionate, and it's mind blowing to me. Like, like it is, you've kind of hit on some of this stuff too, like in the interview, but most people don't have that passion or that drive. So what do you think it is about you, or how do you think about passion? Like what is passion? There's no right answer, but like, what is passion for you? And what is it that keeps you passionate, that keeps you going every day,
I love this question because I don't have an answer. And now I'm going to like explore this probably for the next 2 weeks. I mean,
it's one of my favorite like topics to hit on, because it is such an intangible thing. Like, what even is passion? Like, what is that sensation, but you seem to be very passionate. So,
well, I mean, I kind of feel like I fancy myself as a, part-time philosopher, which I think is where a lot of this kind of grand scale thinking comes from, and understanding how to look at things from different perspectives. And so I feel like, this is a very philosophical question, what is passion? And I feel like the answer, because it's different for everybody, the answer must lie in what is it all for? What is the point, right? If you can answer that for yourself, you can then identify your passion or lack of that passion. For example, for me, what is this all for? Well, I have like 2 or 3 answers for that. And that reminds me, oh yeah, like if I don't show up 100% every day for this, whatever, internship, then what is it all for? Well, the reason I'm here is not to pass the class, to pass college. I want to pass the class, to pass college, to get a freaking job in the industry. That's what it's all for. And if that is dictated by this moment, me making these stupid photocopies and keeping them crisply stacked and warm and getting them delivered, then damn it, I'm going to get these things delivered nice and crisp and clean and warm, right, to these people. And now on the outside, what does that look looking in? Well, that looks like passion to those people. Wow, he really cares. He really is passionate about what he's doing. But the reason is because, well, that's what it's for. Conversely, if your whole thing is like, I want to be a viz dev artist. Okay, well, why? Like, what's it all for? Well, you might say, because I want to have a really successful job that feels creative and that I'll be able to take care of a future family and, be able to do this thing that I love. Okay, well, I find a lot of holes in that. It sounds good on the surface. It sounds like what you would say like in an interview to somebody, where do you want to be in 5 years, right? But actually what I'm hearing is, well, check out a job in production rather than as a viz dev artist, because you still get to have a well-paying job. You still get to be in the creative environment. You still get to do art on the side as a hobby, and you can take care of your family that way. But to know that you are going to be faced with layoffs and hiatuses and managing your money very closely and asking for a job every single year because projects end and projects start, that's a lot of pressure and stress that somebody may not want, but you still get to have all the things you wanted to have. And that's where your passion really is. Well, great. Then just do art on the side and you relieve all the stress and pressure of the other stuff that you maybe don't want to deal with. So again, like, it can work in both ways. What is this all for? And can you achieve those things? For me, I cannot go another day without creating and being like a larger scale, like visionary of story and communicating ideas and making people feel passion by these fictitious worlds that we create and all that stuff. Like, that is a big deal for me. And I can't do that just by, doing whatever else and doing art on the side. Right.
I love that. I mean, like, such a good insight. You said, like, kind of when you first started answering was, and it's such a cool way to think about it. Like, that's going to be a clip for sure that I'm going to make from this is, when you're an intern, every moment is an opportunity for you to make progress toward the bigger vision, which again, the self-awareness, but also broader awareness. But that's such a good way to think about it that I think most people lack is it's like long-term gratification, right? It's gratifying short-term for the long-term, but having that awareness. And that is such a good way to put it, was that copying those papers. For most people, it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. But for you, you knew, like, you had that vision. So like, that's such an amazing way to think about it. So awesome. So, okay. We're 10 more minutes. I would love to hear about Studio Smokescreen. Like, what is the vision of it? What was the seed of co-founding this? Like, how did you get started with it? And what is like the mission with Studio Smokescreen?
Yeah, so it's funny, everything we just talked about for the last 50 minutes sums up like how we got to Studio Smokescreen. And kind of the quick version of this story is, so my brother and I, well, first of all, I have now been in the industry for 15 years as of just last month. And I've seen a lot of stuff. And I've seen a lot of like miracles happen, like Hollywood miracles happen. And I've seen a lot of like, the rug getting pulled out from under people that you would never expect. That's the nature of the industry. But having seen that, and a lot of, by the way, injustices, which leads to where we're going, a lot of systematic injustices within the industry as a whole, but sure, certainly with animation. And so anyway, having done all the stuff that you just heard, because I also had to do this at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of people who looked like me in the industry. And so there was a lot of like fighting tooth and nail and being so aware that I'm like, I have to perform at 300% more than that guy over there to get the same amount of recognition or whatever. I don't want to go too far down that road, but all of that leads to my success. So at the top of the pandemic, my brother and I were going on a Father's Day hike, and we were talking about all things fatherhood and blah blah blah, which was really awesome. He has 2 young boys. I have 2 young girls. And when we inevitably get to the part of conversation, like how's work going? So I'm telling him like just everything is just so amazing, you know, like studios are very flattering. Everybody wants me to come jump on this show, like 2 seasons guaranteed, no test, you know, whatever. Come jump on this show. We need you to direct. I had like a few potential, like 3 or 4 potential directing opportunities, head of story on some feature at like Netflix, just all these amazing opportunities. And at the time I was just finishing on Elena of Avalor. So I had 1 foot out of the door, and Disney's like, you know, we would love you to stay here. We see big things for you. We really want to, you know, explore that. So please don't leave. And I'm telling all this to my brother, and he's like, wow, you know, you really have built such a fantastic path. What do you want to do with all that momentum and all that trajectory that you have? And, you know, basically what he was getting at, because he's a business guy, he was thinking about like some kind of entrepreneurial venture. And I'm like, well, I tried that before and it didn't really turn out to the level of that I was hoping. It was fun, but it didn't really get where I wanted it to. And he said, you know, maybe you should try again, because now it's a whole different landscape for you. And I think you would have a lot of success. And I thought about it and I said, you know, I'll do it if you do it with me, because again, that self-awareness, I knew that he had what I didn't have, which was the ability to turn creativity into a business, right? And that's a whole different thing that a lot of people try and get to various levels of success with. But the level of success I would want, I needed him to help get there. So he said, yeah, let's do it. And that's how we created our studio, which is Studio Smokescreen. But then the next question he said is like, why are we doing this? Because he knows, as well as I know, as well as you know too, that here in Hollywood, like there's no shortage of production companies and studios and things like that of all types of shapes and sizes. So we really wanted to make sure what we were getting into was going to feel impactful in some kind of way. So he asked, what would that look like for me? And after thinking about it for a very, very short time, I realized, you know, having done all of the work I had to do to get to where I am and suffering a lot of really unfair things that, I mean, I have so many stories that I could fill just an hour alone with those stories. It was really important to me that all of the people that I've met who have similar stories to me, I could maybe use this as a way to help them and do it in a way that would elevate them and support them and help them bypass a lot of those hurdles that I faced. And he said, yeah, that's great. And for him, having 2 kids and even myself, it was really hard. It is really hard to find a lot of material and content, just shows in general, that look and feel authentic to their experiences, right? Like things that feel really rich and like people spent time on it and really invested the same amount of energy and even money that they do on like a big scale Hollywood situation. So we wanted to figure out how we could bring those 2 things together and make that the cornerstone of Studio Smokescreen. And that's what we did. So we've created what we call a bridge studio. And what that means is we are facilitating a bridge for people. We find people wherever they are in their journey, right? And whether it's just coming out of school, recently graduated, or have been graduated for a long time, but they're kind of getting like little freelance crumbs here and there, but not really getting the big kickstart or the big push they need. We find them, we pull them into our studio, and we teach them, this is how you work in a studio setting at professional and broadcast level quality, at broadcast level speed, which is that's the big killer of why people don't get a chance taken on them, is you have to learn how to work at a certain pace to keep up in the industry. So we teach them all that. We vet them to make sure that they have the same knowledge, understanding, and passion and self-awareness that I learned is really important. We teach it to them, and then we hand them off to the major studio circuit so that they can go work at their dream studio of wherever that is, Netflix or Disney or DreamWorks or wherever. And what we've been finding though is people love it at Studio Smokescreen. They're like, no, I'm good. I want to stay here because, you know, what we do and the way we foster people and their passions, whether it's in production or creative or whatever it is, you know, we're building this kind of new thing that all of the industry is really excited about. I mean, we're constantly in meetings with studios as partners for, you know, whatever studio you can think of, where we're discussing like shows to make for them and, you know, how to like show them what we're doing successfully as a model for how to prepare this upcoming talent from these otherwise marginalized communities and things like that, like people of color and women and queer community members, everybody who's for a long time had a struggle of breaking into the industry. So it's been a pretty fun and pretty rewarding experience.
That's amazing. I mean, just it's like it goes back to, of course, you would want to start something where it's like rooted in helping other people because you have that just like passion to try to help and motivate people. I mean, this is like one of the best interviews I've had with really like digging into some of this stuff. Like you hit on so many awesome things. So anyway, Kris, this was awesome. I really appreciate you doing this. I can't wait to just follow you and see your success. And thank you so much for being a mentor for the Screencraft animation, because there's a lot that people are going to get from engaging with you in any way. So thank you so much for this. This was awesome.
Yeah, no problem. This is great. Thank you for having me and for the really thoughtful questions.
Yeah, thank you.